Today we're at the Desert National Wildlife Refuge off the Corn Creek exit of Highway 95 north of Las Vegas. And our goal today, I'm going to call this Fossil Ridge end to end. We made a trip up Fossil Ridge a couple years ago, and that's on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. Fossil Ridge is over in this direction near the rising sun, and it is a ridge between the Sheep Range, which is this mountain range here, and Gas Peak. There's Gas Peak, and Fossil Ridge is a ridge on the south end of the Sheep Range, basically right under the rising sun you see in the distance here. When we explored Fossil Ridge a couple of years ago, we went along the northern base of Fossil Ridge, and yes, it lived up to its name. We found fossils that were pretty much nautilus fossils. I don't know exactly how old they were, but because I'm not a geologist, but I've got a page on LasVegasAreaTrails.com that shows the fossils, the nautilus fossils, and that was pretty cool. But I thought, I could climb this ridge and then travel, it's approximately a mile along the top of the ridge just to see if there's something more than what I saw last time. And so this is going to be like the complete experience of Fossil Ridge. We're going to start out, it's up Mormon Well Road, and in about 5 miles, that road goes through what's called Yucca Pass, which is right between Fossil Ridge and the Sheep Range. So I'll go along the northern edge of Fossil Ridge for about a mile and just take a few pictures, videos of the fossils that are there, and then ascend Fossil Ridge and head back along the top of Fossil Ridge for that mile and see what more we can find. So it should be a pretty cool day. Anyway, yeah, speaking of cool, it's about 60 degrees today right now. It's going to get a lot warmer. Okay, now you're looking at the La Madre Mountain. Yeah, there's La Madre Mountain in the La Madre Mountains wilderness. And moving more in this direction, you can see there's Mummy Mountain in the sun, the long mountain there that if you look carefully it looks like a mummy. Much better view on the LasVegasAreaTrails.com 4-peak circuit adventure, where I got a picture in the sunrise, just at the moment of sunrise. I was on the southern ridge of Kyle Canyon and looked across to Mummy Mountain there, and wow, it really looked like a mummy from that perspective. And I've got a picture of that on that page on Las Vegas Area Trails. A little pointy peak over to the left of Mummy Mountain is Griffith Peak, and between the two there's Angel Peak. You can see, if you look carefully, you can see some towers from a military installation there, radar towers, I believe. I don't know if you call them towers, but there's radar equipment up there. And that's pretty much a good view of where we are in the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, by the way, which is the largest wildlife refuge in the lower 48 States, and it was established for bighorn sheep. Now, I'm not going to see bighorn sheep on Fossil Ridge. That would be in the sheep range, and I'll be traveling at some point the whole length of the upper sheep range, and if I don't see bighorn sheep there, I don't know if they are to be seen. If you want to see bighorn sheep, I've got a number of great videos of bighorn sheep that I saw at Valley of Fire Park, and so you can check out Valley of Fire Park on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. Okay, let's get going up to Fossil Ridge, right under the rising sun. Here we go. Here's something I never noticed before. I guess when you're on foot, you can see a lot of things that you don't see when you're roaring by in a vehicle. And yeah, there are a lot of springs in this area. You can tell where there's water by the sudden change in plant life. Here's some tall reed grasses. And so there is a water source here. Pretty cool. Look at this. And when you look at the surrounding desert, you can see how unique this actually is. Let's see if we can get a shot with the sun in the right angle. Yeah, look at that. How tall those are. And then you look at the surrounding desert. Nothing like this anywhere else. And at least in this area. And there you go, toward the Mount Charleston Wilderness, La Madre Mountains Wilderness. There's Mormon Well Road that we are traveling. And now we get a better shot of Yucca Gap, which we will be traveling not too far into the future here. There is Fossil Ridge, and then Yucca Gap. The reason it's called Yucca Gap is it's the gap, it is the gap between Fossil Ridge and the sheep range. There's the sheep range. So we're heading up in that direction. Takes about an hour on foot. I'm not running today, still in recovery mode from 3 surgeries the last 8 weeks. And so we're slowed down a little bit, but still, even walking, it just takes about an hour to get up to the Fossil Ridge area from the Desert National Wildlife Refuge headquarters. So, and then by the way, there's Gas Peak. So this is our destination. Let's head up toward Fossil Ridge, Yucca Gap, and see what we can find. And here, very close to that other section of wild grasses, tall wild grass, it's got to be like 15 feet tall. That's amazing. But anyway, here you have some cattails. So we know there's a lot of water under the ground here in this otherwise very dry desert in order to support plants like this. So there you have it. And you can see different oases in the area. So if you know where to look, there is water in this area. And there is a lot of plant life too. There's some creosote bushes. And Gas Peak right in the background of these creosotes. Okay, let's continue up toward Fossil Ridge. Okay, we're still heading up Mormon Well Road toward Yucca Gap, which is that gap between the southern end of the sheep range on the left to the north, and Fossil Ridge to the south of that on the right. There's Yucca Gap. But what I wanted to show you at this point, I'm scoping out approaches that will enable me to do the sheep range up ahead here. Sheep range from end to end, from the southern to the northern end of the sheep range. And here's a potential approach for that. You see the alluvial fan? It's a fan of deposits, rock, gravel, sand, and it creates a fan over time. It comes down from the canyons in mountains and it fans out once it reaches the base of the mountains, and you can see the fan right in the center here. That is a good indicator of a potential approach. Just go up that fan, up the canyon at the top of the fan, and then reach the sheep range up here and take a left and head toward the northern end of the sheep range. So this is one potential southern approach to the sheep range. Should be pretty cool. At some point we'll try this alluvial fan out. There's another approach in the middle of Yucca Gap that's a straight south approach, and you can see how the sheep range has a gradual incline, at least in the beginning. And it looks like gradual. When you get up there, it may not be so gradual. But anyway, yeah, that's another southern approach to the sheep range, and we'll show you that when we get up there into Yucca Gap. Okay, onward to Yucca Gap and Fossil Ridge, which is the hill or ridge to the right or south of Yucca Gap. Here we go. Just want to mention another cool trip I did on foot here at the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, where I traveled on foot from the Desert National Wildlife Refuge headquarters up to the summit of Gas Peak, the eastern summit, the true summit, over 7,000 feet. And then I crossed the upper ridge of Gas Peak between the summit on your left, the eastern summit, and the western summit. And this area right between I call the Gas Peak Gauntlet, because you're traversing an avalanche slope the whole way. A little bit touch and go. Then I made it over to the western end, descended, and then continued around the western edge of Gas Peak over to the end of Rainbow Avenue in Las Vegas. That was quite a trip. Call it the Gas Peak Grand Crossing. So that would be another adventure to look up on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. The Gas Peak Grand Crossing. And you can see, as we look ahead, there's Yucca Gap, right between Fossil Ridge on the right and the sheep range on the left. We're closing in on it. And here you can see, let's take a look at the sheep range. Here you can see the expanse of the sheep range, and there right in the center is that alluvial fan, which is a potential approach to the southern summit. And then, of course, looking at the Mojave Desert, Joshua trees, and you see Mormon Well Road in the foreground here. And then on down to, we've already ascended about 600, 700 feet. We'll have ascended 2,000 feet. It looks like a gradual ascent on Mormon Well Road, but wow, it is a couple thousand feet by the time we get to the eastern edge of Fossil Ridge. And then you can see the Mount Charleston Wilderness and you see Mummy Mountain, the large dome right in the center. There's lots of adventures in the Mummy Mountain area, wilderness area, and the Mount Charleston loop, and then another adventure that I did last summer was from Lee Canyon all the way out to Bonanza Peak, and I believe that might be the snow-covered peak that you see in the center. And that was definitely an all-day experience. We're looking at maybe a 25, 30-mile round trip by the time we did that. But very beautiful area up there, and definitely encourage you to take the Bonanza Trail at some point from Lee Canyon over to Bonanza Peak. You pass McFarland Peak on the way, which is another peak that we will summit sometime during the summer. Maybe this summer, maybe a future summer. We don't know. And there you can see the Mount Charleston Wilderness, and then looking over at La Madre Mountains Wilderness. There's La Madre, and I don't know if you can see El Padre Mountain right next to it. And I actually discovered what I'm going to call Little La Madre and Little El Padre Mountains in the Summerland area by the Little Red Rock area, and we'll explore those. It's really interesting. They're on the same geological feature, the Keystone Thrust, upon which the La Madre and El Padre Mountains sit, only they're further down to the east. As you go down that ridge from La Madre Mountain, it's near the base of the ridge. You can probably see them from here. They're about 3,000 feet below. But the reason I call it Little La Madre and Little El Padre Mountain is that geologically, I mean, you look at them, maybe topographically is a better term. Topographically, they are very similar to La Madre and El Padre Mountain, and it may be next week that I summit those and just look around and point out the similarities. Anyway, yeah, continuing up toward Yucca Gap, Fossil Ridge on the right to the south, Sheep Range on the left to the north. Here we go. New little improvement off of Mormon Well Road. There's Mormon Well Road. And as you're traveling in the Sheep Range, you will see a number of turnouts where there's a great view if you are, definitely want to get out of your four-wheel drive vehicle. And I say four-wheel drive because if you're traveling Mormon Well Road, or the other main road is Alamo Road, you definitely don't want to be in a two-wheel drive vehicle and leave your low rider at home because you won't make it very far. So yeah, they left a little Joshua tree in the center. How cute. Anyway, this is a little area where you can pull off, and there are a number of other areas like this, and just get a perspective of the Sheep Range, which is really the centerpiece of the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. And you can see as you get closer to the Sheep Range, wow, what looked so smooth and easy to traverse. Look at how broken up it is. So yeah, that Sheep Range end-to-end adventure that I was talking about a little earlier, yes, it'll be anything but simple. A lot of terrain to navigate avalanche slopes, cliffs, rocks, lots of stuff, but should be a lot of fun too. I'll probably do it in a number of sections, not do it all in one day. I don't know if it can be done in one day. Anyway, yeah. So here we have the newest viewpoint here off of Mormon Well Road. Wasn't here last year, which shows that they're still improving this area. And here, by the way, you can see one of the rugged washes that are around the Sheep Range. And once again, yeah, you look at the desert from a distance and it seems, oh wow, this is really smooth going. And you get into the desert and you find that yes, you're going to be climbing up and down various cliffs and ridges and drop-offs all over the place. So yeah, keep your eyes open as you're traveling in this seemingly level open desert. Okay, let's continue on toward Yucca Gap, heading back to Mormon Well Road. Here we go. First major intersection, major intersection, that's kind of funny. Anyway, off of Mormon Well Road, and it's the intersection of Gas Peak Road. There's a closer look at the sign. It's about 5 miles we've covered so far. And yeah, there's a main trail to the summit of Gas Peak. And oh my gosh, you've got to see Las Vegas from the summit of Gas Peak. It's like you are in an airplane. And that's the only that's the only thing I can compare it to, although it's much better because you're not in an enclosed area looking out a little window, but you got the whole world around you. And let's see, let's take a look up there. So yeah, from the summit of Gas Peak, right in the center there, all of Las Vegas is spread out below you. And just to get a quick 360, here you see the, down Mormon Well Road, the area we've traversed, and it's going to be a little hazy later in the day. At least that's the weather report. Depending on where you are in the country, you get those sirens that are warning signs that sound out on your cell phone that say there's a problem. It could be hurricane, tornado, flood, whatever. In Las Vegas, we had a warning sign last week for high winds and dust. And the warning part about it is that there is so much dust that visibility on the road is very, very much hampered. And some of the winds, boy, they've been 30, 50 miles an hour, steady winds, gusts, that much or more. Here's the Sheep Range, by the way. And there was a time a few years ago when on one of the freeways in Las Vegas, there was a semi that was knocked on its side because of these winds. And if you add dust to it, wow, it could be pretty bad. So there is a warning for this afternoon. I'll be up on Fossil Ridge, and maybe I'll find a good use for my COVID mask to help shield me from breathing all that dust. Anyway, right now you're looking straight at Yucca Gap with the southern tip of the Sheep Range to the north of Yucca Gap. And to the south, there's Yucca Gap again, right in the center. To the south is Fossil Ridge. So we will be summiting Fossil Ridge when we get to the, this is the western end of Fossil Ridge. When we get to the eastern end, we're going to summit Fossil Ridge and then just travel the entire ridge in search of fossils. So continuing on. Closing in on Yucca Gap, and there's Fossil Ridge to the south. To the south. And Sheep Range to the north. And by the way, we're looking for additional approaches. Looks pretty rugged up there. That may not be a valid southern approach to the Sheep Range. Anyway, on the other side, the east side of Yucca Gap, is the most amazing Joshua Tree forest. Goes forever, and we'll be seeing that soon. On the northern base of Fossil Ridge, almost looks like, if you've been at the coast and you've seen the waves crashing against the rocks, these look like those rocks. And this whole area was underwater at one time. And guess what? Here is our first nautilus shell. See right there in the center. Millions of years old. That thing was swimming around millions of years ago. And guess what? Right up here is another. And you can see the spiral shape. So yeah, we're starting to see fossils all around us at the base of Fossil Ridge in these rocks that look like they're on the shore of some ocean, except the ocean isn't here. Maybe we're only one major California earthquake away from being beachfront property once again in this area. So who knows? Anyway, we're starting to look at Fossil Ridge here. And by the way, here's a sign in case you missed it. There it says Fossil Ridge. Let's continue on and make a few more discoveries along the edge here, the northern edge of Fossil Ridge. And just a few feet beyond that last spot, look at this. If you look closely, you can see that this whole rock area is just packed with nautilus shells and other fossils, if I could recognize them all. But wow, look, all around us. So this must have been quite the nautilus capital of the ancient sea, right in this area. And they're just everywhere. You see the spiral shape of the shells. Here's another bunch. These. More nautilus shells in these ocean shore rocks. Wow, they're just everywhere. You look closely and you can see them emerging. And yeah, if you're out in this area, there's the Fossil Ridge sign. And just before you get to the Fossil Ridge sign, you will see nautilus shells in these rocks. And there are even more, I'm sure, after, because all of these rocks are ancient ocean rocks. And then beyond the Fossil Ridge sign, looking through Yucca Gap, there's our first view of the incredible yucca forest that we'll see in a bit. And still more nautilus shells. What's the plural of nautilus? Is it nautili? Well, there's a group of nautili, if that is the plural. We don't know, but hey, we're finding them. And, oh, let's see. There was something else down here that looked a little different than a nautilus shell. I guess we're not going to see it right now. It may have swum away. But these rocks, yeah, you can almost hear the waves crashing against them. Or maybe they were deep down underwater. They're full of fossils. I don't want to forget, we're still scoping out the southern end of the Sheep Range, looking for potential routes upward. And yeah, it looks like there are ways to get up these initial ridges, but what would you find when you reach the top of the ridge? Maybe a dead end, we don't know. But we'll find out. And here we are on the northern base of Fossil Ridge, finding fossils today. And we'll continue along the northern base, and then when we get to the other end of Fossil Ridge, we'll ascend Fossil Ridge and just traverse the top, the summit of Fossil Ridge, see what we can find up on top. Here's a little pull-out area. If you're traveling up Mormon Well Road and you want to stop and look around the base of Fossil Ridge, people stop here in this spot and then they just climb these rocks. It looks kind of steep, but actually because of the surface is so I don't know, it's just broken up, that it provides excellent traction, so you can actually climb up the side of this and go up to the top and imagine what you'd see on the way up. We'll be up there not too long from now. So, okay. Anyway, continuing up to the eastern edge of Fossil Ridge. Okay, speaking of southern approaches up the Sheep Range, this looks like an interesting little canyon that I might try at some point. See if I can. I think it gets a little iffy up in these rocks here, but maybe I see another little canyon just on the other side of this ridge here. We'll check them both out at some point. Not today. Today is Fossil Ridge end-to-end day, and looking up at Fossil Ridge, we'll be circling around. Yeah, look at this. These rocks here along Fossil Ridge are just packed with fossils. Now, I've seen nautilus so far, but I'm just wondering if there are others. We'll take a look. And then, of course, you've got the, looking out the other end of Yucca Gap to the Mount Charleston Wilderness and perhaps Bonanza Peak, actually, right down in this area. So that's looking down Mormon Well Road, down Yucca Gap, and then here's the southern part of the Sheep Range. And yeah, these rocks, these dark rocks, are just packed with fossils. So here is looking up the eastern end of Yucca Gap, and as you can see, we're already seeing Joshua Tree forest beginning to just take over the whole area. And wait till you see the eastern side of Fossil Ridge and the Joshua trees there. Okay, we are rounding the western end of Fossil Ridge, where we will begin to ascend after we get around a little further. But you can see ahead that the ridge continues on to the west. And I imagine that's just packed with fossils, that whole area. We won't be going there today, just this section. And here you can see the Joshua Tree Forest, which is just amazing. It goes on and on forever. We'll get a view of this from above as we summit Fossil Ridge. But wow, this is the largest Joshua Tree forest I've ever seen, and it actually continues around the western end of the Sheep Range here and fills this entire valley of the Sheep Range. So you're just seeing a very small portion of this Joshua Tree forest. And as I'm looking up in this direction, always looking for southern approaches, wow, those cliffs look pretty steep. I don't know if that's going to be a southern approach. Maybe that alluvial fan that we saw earlier on the western, southwestern side of the Sheep Range will be the best bet for starters. Looks like a lot of cliff action up there. Okay, let's continue along around this western end of this section of Fossil Ridge. Here we go. Okay, we're on the eastern edge of this portion of Fossil Ridge, and we will be ascending up that way. But just wanted to point out another group of nautilus shells. There they are. All over the place here. And the darker rocks must be the older rocks, because that's where I'm finding the nautilus shells. Here we are in the eastern end of Fossil Ridge, at least this section of Fossil Ridge. And as I mentioned, it looks like it continues on beyond here. I don't know if all that's still called Fossil Ridge, but it's certainly geologically very similar. But now the question of how to get up to this ridge. Now there's a gully over here that looks very doable, but then the ridge itself also looks very doable. Yeah, we'll figure it out. And the rock has awesome traction. And imagine what we're going to discover on the way up. Here we go. A lot of good approaches, and got to make a choice, so I think I'm going to head right up this area. Get to the top of the ridge there. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. All right, pause about 2/3 of the way up the east side of Fossil Ridge just to get an experience of where we are. Yes, it is as steep as it looks. In fact, steeper in some spots. Fortunately, the rocks have some good traction, but wow, you got to watch every step as far as how secure the footing is. But here is a good shot of Mormon Well Road as it rounds a corner, and then all down below us is that incredible Joshua Tree Forest that just goes on forever and ever. Whoops, there we go. And so you can see huge Joshua Tree Forest on the east side of the Sheep Range. And let me pan out so you can just get an idea of what we're looking at here. All Joshua trees below us. Pretty amazing. So yes, we are we are inching our way up this. I wouldn't call it a cliff, but it's definitely class 3 because I have to use my hands in order to ascend this and get a good hold. But you can see the more of Fossil Ridge on the east side, continuing along. So yeah, we're not going to do the whole Fossil Ridge, but we're going to head up from this location. Let's see if I can turn around and look up. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. That's what I have to climb. And actually, it looks like it's leveling off a little bit compared to what it was below. So, yeah, everything's loose. So we're continuing on up Fossil Ridge. And by the way, just thought I'd mention, not nearly as many fossils. They're few and far between on this eastern edge of Fossil Ridge. I have seen almost none since I began to climb this area. I thought, wow, this is going to be a bonanza, but nope, not today. Okay, onward. Well, let's hope that that Joshua tree up ahead is on the summit, which means that we're closing in. You just gotta pick your best route among these boulders, but so far, not a real, nothing real difficult. Just, I'm not making any land speed records here. And you can see, looking down, there you are, looking down the east side of Fossil Ridge and looking up to our next little section. And yeah, wow. The big question, if I have to come back and descend this way, yeah, I could do it, but it won't be my favorite. But look at the view here. In Mormon Well Road. And then here's the southern tip of the Sheep Range. You can see the angle of the Fossil Ridge here. Wow. How beautiful. It doesn't get better than this. Okay. Let's continue up. One good thing about some of these summits is the angle on some decreases as you get near the summit. On others, there's a head wall that's like a 15-20 foot cliff that would be a barrier. I don't think that's going to happen here today, but those are some of the things that one experiences when exploring like this. Okay. Well, yay, here we are at that Joshua tree. And there is the southern end of the Sheep Range. Here's more of Fossil Ridge. You can see it's leveling off a bit. So that is nice. We'll see how the summit of Fossil Ridge behaves up here. And then looking down, you can see Mormon Well Road. Few cars on the way up. I only saw about 1 car per hour. So, so you're not going to get in a traffic jam on Mormon Well Road. Unless somebody breaks down, and then, yeah, could be a problem. Well, let's see if I can do a 360. It's not the best spot, but it's actually all right. Yeah, and you can see, we'll see more of Gas Peak, but you can see just a bit of Gas Peak, the western side. And just, yeah, look at the rugged terrain here. Pretty amazing. What a desert experience. Okay, and let's see. Let's take a look at the time here, or the altitude. 4,500. So we have ascended close to 2,000 feet, and the rest of the 2,000 feet is up ahead there. Looking in the distance here, you see right between that gully is, that might be Kyle Canyon Road down there. And then over here, La Madre Mountain. So there's a little perspective for you. Let's continue on up this nicer ridge up here. Here we go. Have you ever wondered what the summit of Fossil Ridge looks like? Here you have it. Pretty barren, but beautiful. Now, I gotta say that I still haven't seen fossils up here. And what I'm thinking is those nautilus creatures must have liked deeper water. Maybe this was an island, we don't know. But maybe they wanted the cooler, deeper water, and that's why they're not up at this altitude. We have, yes, ascended nearly 2,000 feet at this point. And that wind that was supposed to be the dust storm is coming up, so I hope you can hear it. There we are looking into the Las Vegas Valley. Maybe you can see it dimly. And here's the western edge of Gas Peak. Yeah, you can even see the summit up there. There's the eastern summit, the Gas Peak Gauntlet, and right between that, right there on the left and the mound on the right is what I call the Western Approach Canyon. Has a regular trailhead. So there you have it. There's a little more of Las Vegas. Northern part of the valley in the growing haze. And then, yeah, Hodosee Mountain. And Damsel Peak. And then to the right of Damsel Peak, La Madre Mountain. And then you see the Mount Charleston Wilderness. And then looking up the Highway 95 corridor. And then here's the southern tip of the Sheep Range. We'll see if we can get over to this next mound. Yeah, I'm wondering how I'm gonna descend this. If worst comes to worst, I'll just go back to where I ascended. And then you see that the expanse of that Joshua Tree Forest, everything you're looking at in this entire valley is Joshua trees. East side of the Sheep Range. Goes on forever. And back to Gas Peak. Okay, this is the direction I came from, and I'm going to walk in the opposite direction in a bit, but I'm not going to try to talk because the wind is too strong. Yes, I'm pretty much blown off my feet. Hard to keep the video steady. Well, what are the chances? There is a fossil on top of Fossil Ridge. This is the first one I've seen. Gully down at the base of that mound. The gully goes all the way down back to the road I came on. Let's continue along this summit of Fossil Ridge and see if there's a way down ahead. As you can see, this is what you have. This is the summit of Fossil Ridge, if you ever wondered. Okay, here's proof the oceans were this high. Still on top of Fossil Ridge. Nautilus. Another kind of shell there. Well, it's a little quieter in this spot. Here we are on top of Fossil Ridge. We're nearing the western end of Fossil Ridge. And I just see the landscape here. Beautiful Joshua trees. Southern tip of the Sheep Range. Way in the distance, I think I'm seeing Telescope Peak in Death Valley, very, very faintly. Well, for whatever else you could say about this place, it is very beautiful, very quiet, windswept today. There are a few fossils, as you saw. So the Nautilus made it up to this level. And looking up the 95 corridor, many people make it to this place. I bet I could be the only one in a long, long time. I don't see any signs of people up here. No little rock cairns. No fire pits. No signs whatsoever of any human passage. Okay, let's continue over to the west end. See if there's a way down there. If not, there is a gully near the east end, off in this direction here, and that gully will take me all the way down. I saw it from a few different angles. So, summit of Fossil Ridge. We'll look over the west end. It's just over this hill, not too far. Well, I can see a way down the west end. If I could make it over to that slope, that would take me down. Fairly steep slope though, and getting there looks like it's not necessarily the easiest thing. So I think what I might do is head back to that gully I saw on the other side. This is the western end of Fossil Ridge, so we did make it end to end from the east to the west on top and skirting the base of Fossil Ridge on the north side by way of Mormon Well Road, which you see below us. And then there's the sheep range. And then here's the landscape on top of Fossil Ridge. So it's pretty cool. Especially if you like Joshua trees. And then there's a look down into the Las Vegas Valley. So there you have it, Gas Peak Road down below. I don't know if you can actually see it down there, but too much glare on the screen here. And you can see the western tip of Gas Peak from here. That's pretty much the story of the summit of Fossil Ridge from end to end. Okay, let's find a way down. This little gully, big gully, on the north side. I saw it from above and from another perspective. It goes all the way down, at least it looked like it, we'll find out. All the way down to Mormon Well Road. So I'm going to take this gully down, and if you want to experience the summit of Fossil Ridge, this gully might be the most gradual ascent to get up to the summit. There are a few fossils here, but most of the fossils are nautilus, and most of them are on the north side, down below, and on the base, along the base of Fossil Ridge. So anyway, that's my summary of fossils on Fossil Ridge, and of course a geologist might find a whole lot of things that I missed, but I tried. Okay, let's head back. Okay, let's call this the Northern Gully. And I believe it takes us all the way down to Mormon Well Road. And I think it's the most gradual approach to the summit. And here, just looking around, there's even a little less wind than there was up on the summit. I know you're hearing a lot of wind. Well, if I had been recording up on the summit, you'd really be hearing wind. I almost got knocked off my feet. Okay, down we go. There we are. There's the gully going up. We just passed through this area. Been kind of slow going. Just a lot of rocks to navigate. But otherwise, you know, everything has been a regular step. It hasn't been difficult at all. And then this is where we're headed. There we go, right down to the road. And hopefully, you know, as long as there's not a dry waterfall in the way, which would cause me to have to backtrack all the way back up this gully, I think we'll be in good shape. Okay, here we go. Somebody's living in this hole. Looks like a great place to live. And we're closing in on Mormon Well Road near the bottom of the gully here. Okay, there is the northern gully, and we are just about down. There's Mormon Well Road. There's the way back. Southern tip of the Sheep Range. Okay, we're back at Mormon Well Road in Yucca Gap, which is turning out to be quite the wind tunnel. And just to give you an idea where we've been, there is the gully we just came down. And this is actually the best way to get to the summit of Fossil Ridge, if you so desire to do. But all the fossils are down here. Okay, let's head back. We're heading back on Mormon Well Road. There is a look back at Yucca Gap, and on the right, more clear than this morning, is Fossil Ridge. On the left is the south edge of the Sheep Range. Wind's died down a little bit. Here is looking ahead toward where we're going. Desert cactus are in bloom. And here's a shot of the Sheep Range. Goes down to the ground. That's where Yucca Pass begins. And there's Gas Peak. Stands out much better in the afternoon sun.